The cosmic archive at Eltrium Prime was nearly empty, just as Saria Velm preferred it. The tall, slender Illyrian scholar moved silently between holographic projections, her iridescent skin catching the soft blue light as historical records floated around her. 300 years of galactic peace had made archives like this one obsolete curiosities, visited only by eccentric researchers like herself. Historical myths and legends. Terra's system, she whispered, and the archive responded by projecting a series of ancient texts before her. Most races called it Earth, though the official Galactic Council records referred to it as Terra Alpha, the forgotten homeworld of the Terrans, humans, as they had called themselves. Saria's six-fingered hand passed through a projection showing the symbolic representation of the human empire, a spread-winged eagle clutching weapons in its talons. Such primitive imagery, she thought, yet somehow haunting. Still chasing ghosts, Scholar Velm? The deep, resonant voice startled her. Admiral Krell Zor stood at the entrance, his massive Draxian frame nearly filling the doorway. The Admiral's exoskeleton gleamed with military decorations, testament to his centuries of service to the Galactic Council. Not ghosts, Admiral. History, Saria replied, dismissing the projections with a wave. There's a difference. Zor made a dismissive sound, somewhere between a laugh and a growl. The humans were barely a historical footnote. 3 decades of interstellar presence, and then extinction. The Council remembers them only as a cautionary tale of hubris. Saria turned fully toward him, her luminescent eyes narrowing. Is that why you're here, Admiral? To remind me that my research is pointless. I'm here because the Council has questions about your recent requisitions. Ancient military transmission protocols, quantum signal interpretations from a dark era. He stepped closer. These are sensitive materials, Scholar. They're relevant to understanding what truly happened in the Purge, Saria said, straightening to her full height, though still a head shorter than the Draxian. The official account has inconsistencies. The official account is quite clear, Zor said coldly. The humans challenged the combined might of 3 elder races over territorial disputes. They were erased, as was appropriate. End of story. Saria was about to respond when both their communication devices pulsed simultaneously with a Priority 1 alert. This only happened during Council-wide emergencies. The message was brief. Unknown quantum signal detected originating from the Chasm of Silence. All senior officials report to Central Command. Saria felt her heart skip a beat. The Chasm of Silence was the designation given to what remained of the Sol system after the Purge. Nothing had come from that sector in centuries. Admiral, Zor was already moving toward the exit. It seems your ghosts are becoming restless, Scholar. The Council chamber buzzed with anxious energy as representatives from the 12 founding civilizations gathered. Saria found herself invited. Unusual for a mere scholar, but her expertise on human history had suddenly become valuable. High Chancellor Vox of the Meridian Collective stood at the center. 4 research stations along the galactic rim have gone silent in the past 30 rotations, she announced. The last, Station Proxima, managed to transmit a final message along with this image. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the charred remains of the station's command center, and burned into the main wall was a massive, unmistakable symbol, the spread-winged eagle of Earth. The chamber erupted in voices. Impossible. A hoax. The humans are extinct. Admiral Zor silenced them with a thunderous slam of his armored fist. Obviously, someone is using human symbolism to create fear. A terrorist group, perhaps, or one of the outer systems seeking to destabilize Council authority. With respect, Admiral, Saria interjected, what if it's not a hoax? The quantum signal from the chasm matches frequencies documented in pre-purge human military communications. Scholar Velm, Zor said dismissively, your fascination with human mythology has clouded your judgment. No species could survive what the humans endured. Their planets were rendered uninhabitable, their fleets destroyed. We have detailed accounts. Accounts written by the victors, Saria said quietly. The High Chancellor raised a hand for silence. Whether this is a genuine return or an imposter using human imagery, it represents a threat to stability. Admiral Zor, assemble a reconnaissance fleet. Investigate these incidents without engaging. Scholar Velm, you will provide historical context and analysis. As the meeting dispersed, Saria found herself approached by an elderly Tarlisian, stooped with age, his crystalline exoskeleton dulled by centuries. She recognized him as Marin Voss, once the Council's foremost military strategist during the Purge era. You believe they've returned, don't you? He whispered, his voice like grinding stones. I believe the official history is incomplete, she answered carefully. The ancient Tarlisian looked around to ensure they weren't overheard. There is something you should see, something I've kept hidden for 3 centuries. Meet me at Archive, Sublevel 12. Access code, Eagle's Shadow. Before she could question him, he shuffled away, leaving Saria with a chill running through her slender frame. Archive, Sublevel 12 hadn't been accessed in decades. The systems were archaic, requiring physical authentication rather than biometric. Saria entered the code Marin had given her, Eagle's Shadow, and the heavy doors slid open with a groan of protest. The ancient Tarlisian waited inside, holding what appeared to be a primitive data crystal. This recording was classified at the highest level, he said without preamble. It was to be destroyed, but I preserved it. Perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of fear. Watch it, and you'll understand why the Council has worked so hard to relegate humans to myth. The crystal contained a single file, a battle recording from 302 years ago. As it played on the ancient projection system, Saria felt her breath catch. The recording showed a space battle unlike any in the official records. 3 combined fleets from the Elder races, thousands of warships, surrounded what appeared to be a lone human vessel. The human ship was unlike the primitive designs in the historical database. This was sleek, black, almost invisible against the void except when it moved. The designation on its hull read, EWS Erebus. What happened next defied explanation. The human vessel seemed to flicker, as though phasing between realities. Suddenly, it was not one ship, but dozens, each identical, each moving with impossible precision. The Elder race's fleets opened fire, but their weapons passed through the phantom ships. Then the real Erebus, if any of them were real, struck back. Beams of energy unlike anything in current military technology lanced out, and where they touched, Elder race ships simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not disabled. They vanished, as though erased from reality itself. In less than 6 minutes, 3 of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy had been reduced to scattered debris. The recording ended with a transmission from the Erebus. We will not be forgotten again. This is merely a demonstration. The full reckoning awaits. Saria stared at the blank projector. This contradicts everything in the official record. The humans weren't destroyed. They fought back. Marin nodded, his crystalline features catching the dim light. What you saw was the last battle before the Purge was ordered. The Council didn't just defeat the humans. They tried to erase their very existence because they feared what you just witnessed. Technology that defied our understanding. Why are you showing me this now? Because, the old strategist said gravely, if that signal from the chasm is genuine, if those stations were marked with the eagle, then what's coming isn't terrorism or rebellion. It's retribution. And Admiral Zor's reconnaissance fleet is flying straight into it. Admiral Krell, Zor, commanded his flagship from a position of absolute confidence. His reconnaissance fleet, 20 of the Council's most advanced warships, moved in tight formation towards Sector 12A, where the most recent research station had gone silent. Long-range scans show no signs of activity, his second-in-command reported. No debris, no radiation signatures, no warp trails. Maintain alert status, Zor ordered. Whatever we're dealing with, they've demonstrated stealth capabilities. His communication officer interrupted. Admiral, incoming transmission from Scholar Velm. She claims it's urgent. Zor sighed. Put her through. Saria's face appeared on the command screen, her expression tense. Admiral, you need to withdraw your fleet immediately. I've uncovered evidence that. Scholar, I'm conducting a military operation, not a historical debate. Zor cut her off. Your concerns can wait until. They have phase shift technology, she blurted out. The humans, if it is them, can make their ships exist in multiple states simultaneously. Your conventional sensors won't detect them until it's too late. Zor's expression hardened. That's theoretical technology. No race has successfully. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice was tight with sudden fear. Multiple signatures appearing out of nowhere. They weren't there a second ago. The main view screen shifted to show the space ahead of them. Where there had been empty void moments before, now hung a dozen sleek, black vessels. They were unlike any design in the Council's database, but the symbol emblazoned on their hulls was unmistakable, the Eagle of Earth. Shields up, weapons systems online. Zor barked, his training taking over. Hail them on all frequencies. No response. Admiral, the communications officer reported tensely. Wait, we're receiving a tight beam message. The message was audio only, a calm, emotionless voice speaking in perfect galactic standard. We've observed you long enough. You still haven't learned. They never do. What happened next occurred so quickly that Zor's mind struggled to process it. The black ships didn't fire energy weapons or launch missiles. Instead, they simply shifted. One moment they were maintaining position. The next, they had somehow relocated to surround his fleet completely. Impossible, Zor whispered. The laws of physics didn't allow for such movement without observable transition. His weapons officer was shouting now. Targeting systems failing. Our missiles are phasing through them. Before Zor could issue another order, a new kind of energy rippled from the human vessels. Not a beam or a pulse, but a wave that passed through shields as though they didn't exist. As it touched each Council ship, their systems went dark. Not damaged, not overloaded, simply completely off. Zor watched in helpless rage as his mighty fleet drifted powerless. Only emergency life support and communications remained. As his ship rotated slowly in the void, he caught sight of one of the human vessels approaching. A final transmission came through. They said you wouldn't believe. They said you'd never accept that we survived. They were right. A pause. They have always been right about your kind. With effort, Zor activated the emergency quantum communicator, their last link to the Council. His message was brief. They've returned, and they're not like before. Then the human ships vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving the powerless Council fleet adrift in the emptiness of Sector 12A. The Council chamber had transformed from a place of dignified governance to the center of a civilization in crisis. Representatives shouted over one another as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Long-range observation posts had detected a massive fleet, hundreds of the black vessels, moving methodically through the outer systems. High Chancellor Vox struggled to maintain order. We must respond with unity and strength. Admiral Zor's fleet was caught unprepared, but our main defensive forces are ready. Saria stood from her assigned seat. Chancellor, engaging them militarily would be catastrophic. Their technology is far beyond ours. The humans were a minor species, shouted the Craxon representative, his tentacles lashing in agitation. How could they have advanced so far in 3 centuries? Because, Saria said, they were never destroyed in the first place. A deep silence fell over the chamber. Explain yourself, scholar, the Chancellor demanded. Saria took a breath. I've analyzed the historical record alongside the new evidence. The Purge didn't eliminate humanity. It drove them into hiding. Think about it. A species goes from interstellar travel to supposed extinction in just 3 decades. It never made sense. She activated the central hologram, displaying the recording Marin had shown her. The Council members watched in stunned silence as the lone Erebus decimated 3 Elder Race fleets. This battle occurred before the official start of the Purge, Saria continued. The Council didn't destroy humanity. They feared them. The Purge wasn't extermination, it was containment. The Council bombarded Earth's surface to make it appear uninhabitable, declared victory, and then systematically erased human achievements from our histories. This is sedition, the Kraxan representative hissed. This is truth, Saria countered. And now they've returned, with 3 centuries of technological development we know nothing about. A junior officer burst into the chamber, protocol forgotten in his panic. The human fleet has arrived at Ketheri. They've bypassed all outer defenses. The blood drained from the Chancellor's face. Ketheri was the central military logistics hub of the Council, home to their largest shipyards and weapons depots. How many ships? She asked. Hundreds, the officer replied, and they're led by a vessel larger than any we've ever encountered. It's broadcasting on all frequencies. Let us hear it, the Chancellor ordered. The voice that filled the chamber was female, cold, and precise. I am Admiral Lyra Holt of the Earth Battle Group Nemesis. We do not speak with words. We speak with consequences. Ketheri will demonstrate our vocabulary. The transmission cut off. Moments later, long-range sensors reported unprecedented energy readings from the Ketheri system. When the readings cleared, one of Ketheri's moons, home to the Council's automated defense network, had vanished completely. Not destroyed. Vanished. They've developed mass displacement technology, Saria whispered, awestruck despite her terror. They can remove object from our reality entirely. The council chamber descended into chaos. The battle, if it could be called that, for Ketheri lasted less than a day. Council forces fought bravely, but were hopelessly outmatched. The human ships moved with impossible precision, their weapons bypassing shields, their hulls shrugging off the Council's most powerful weaponry. Most terrifying was their apparent ability to predict Council tactics before they were even implemented. When the Council fleet attempted a flanking maneuver, the human ships were already in position to counter it. When they launched a surprise attack from a hidden facility, the humans neutralized it before the ships could even power their weapons. It was as though the humans could see the future. Or perhaps, Saria theorized as she reviewed the battle footage, they simply remembered the past too well. 3 days after Ketheri fell, High Chancellor Vox summoned Saria to a private chamber. The proud leader looked age beyond her years. You're now the Council's chief advisor on human affairs, the Chancellor said without preamble. Everything you know, every theory you have, every scrap of information about them. I want it all. Chancellor, I've been researching human myths for years, but even I don't understand what we're seeing, Saria admitted. Their technology, their strategies, they're beyond anything in our records. They've demanded a meeting, the Chancellor said, her voice hollow. One representative from the Council. They specifically requested you. Saria felt her heart flutter with fear. Me? What? Perhaps because you alone treated their history as more than myth. The Chancellor's gaze was piercing. You will go. You will discover their intentions. The future of our civilization may depend on it. As Saria prepared to leave, Admiral Zor entered. He had been recovered along with his crew, adrift but unharmed. The experience had changed him. The arrogance was gone from his bearing. They could have killed us all, he said quietly. They disabled our ships and left us alive. Why? Perhaps the same reason they've requested a meeting, Saria replied. They want something more than destruction. Zor's expression hardened. I'm assembling our remaining forces at Goran Prime. It's our most fortified position. Planetary shields, automated defense systems, 50,000 warships. If your meeting fails, we'll make our stand there. And if they can simply remove Goran from existence, as they did Ketheri's moon, then we die with dignity, Zor said grimly. But we won't surrender the galaxy without a fight. The human diplomatic vessel was nothing like their warships. Where those were black and predatory, this ship gleamed silver, its lines elegant and flowing. It waited at the designated neutral coordinates, alone and apparently unarmed. Saria's shuttle approached cautiously. She had volunteered to come alone against the Council's objections. If the humans had wanted to destroy her, they could have done so 1,000 times over. As her shuttle docked, she noticed the vessel's name etched in human script, EWS Remembrance. The airlock cycled, and Saria found herself facing a human for the first time in her life. Admiral Lyra Holt was tall for her species, with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair. She wore a simple black uniform without ornamentation, yet carried herself with unmistakable authority. "Scholar Velm," Holt said, her voice the same one that had announced the attack on Kethri. "Welcome aboard." Saria followed the Admiral through corridors lined with what appeared to be artwork, paintings and sculptures that depicted Earth as it had once been. Vibrant, alive, beautiful. They entered a conference room where a view screen showed the ongoing human blockade of Council space. Hundreds of their ships maintained position, silent and watchful. "You've studied us," Holt stated, not a question. "I've studied what little remained in our archives," Saria corrected. "Fragments. Myths." A cold smile touched Holt's lips. Exactly as they intended. She gestured to a chair. "Please sit. There's something you should see before we begin formal discussions." The view screen changed to show historical footage, but not the sanitized versions in Council archives. These showed Council ships bombarding Earth cities, showed human civilians fleeing as their atmosphere was set ablaze, showed children dying in the cold of space as refugee ships were methodically hunted down. "The Council has maintained that the Purge was a justified response to human aggression," Holt said quietly, "that we were warmongers who threatened galactic peace." The screen showed a different scene now, a peace conference. Human delegates offering terms, Council representatives agreeing, then opening fire once the humans lowered their shields. "We sued for peace 7 times, Holt continued. Each time, the Council used the opportunity to attack. Not because we were dangerous, but because we had something they wanted. What? The technology you've witnessed. Phase shifting. Reality manipulation. Even then, we were developing it. The Council saw the potential and decided such power shouldn't belong to a young race. They tried to exterminate us to claim it for themselves." Saria felt sick. "If this is true, it is. Your own archives confirm it, if anyone had bothered to look deeply enough." Holt's eyes were hard. "But that's the past. Let's discuss the future. Are you here for revenge?" Saria asked directly. "To do to us what was done to you? If revenge were our goal, your civilizations would already be ash," Holt replied. "No, Scholar. We're here to correct the record." Admiral Krell Zor stood on the command deck of his new flagship at Gorn Prime, watching as the massive planetary defense grid powered up. 50,000 warships, everything the Council had left, formed concentric rings around the fortified planet. "This is where we make our stand," he told his assembled officers. "If Scholar Velm's diplomatic mission fails, we will show these humans that the Council still has teeth." A junior officer approached, saluting nervously. "Admiral, we're detecting unusual transmissions across all civilian networks." "What kind of transmissions?" "Historical records, sir. Footage of the Purge, but not our version. It shows atrocities. Council ships firing on unarmed human vessels. Civilian habitats being vented to space." Zor's blood ran cold. "Block those transmissions. It's psychological warfare." "We can't, sir. They're coming from within our own network architecture, as though they've always been there." Before Zor could respond, the planetary defense sensors blared. The human fleet had arrived, not in small groups, but all at once. Hundreds of black ships blinking into existence around Gorn Prime, effortlessly penetrating the defensive lines. At their center flew a massive vessel that dwarfed even the largest Council dreadnoughts. The EWS Erebus, the same ship from the ancient recording, but larger, more evolved. "All ships, battle formation," Zor ordered. "Planetary shields at maximum." But the expected attack never came. Instead, every communication device on every Council ship and on the planet below activated simultaneously. The face of Admiral Lyra Holt appeared. "This is your one opportunity to avoid unnecessary death," she said simply. "Gorn Prime was built on the ruins of a human colony world. We have come to reclaim what is ours. You have 1 hour to evacuate all military and civilian personnel." Zor slammed his fist on the communication panel. "This is Admiral Zor of the Galactic Council Defense Force. We will not surrender Gorn Prime, or any council territory to terrorists and myths. Holt's expression didn't change. Your hour begins now. We will provide coordinates for safe evacuation corridors. The transmission ended. They're bluffing, Zor told his officers. They could have attacked immediately. The fact that they're allowing evacuation shows weakness, not strength. Yet even as he spoke, he watched the sensor displays with growing unease. Civilian ships were already fleeing through the corridors the humans had designated. His own crews looked uncertain. Admiral, his second-in-command said quietly, perhaps we should consider. Consider what? Surrender? Abandoning the most fortified position in council space without firing a shot. Zor's anger flared. I'd rather die with honor than live with such shame. 59 minutes later, Zor stood alone on his command deck. Most of his officers had evacuated, along with the majority of Goran Prime's population. Only the most loyal, or the most foolhardy, remained. As the final seconds ticked away, Zor opened a channel to the Erebus. You won't find us such easy prey, Admiral Holt. The Council has endured for millennia. We'll endure this, too. Holt's reply was calm. You still don't understand. This isn't about destruction. It's about remembrance. At precisely 1 hour, the human fleet moved, not to attack, but to surround Goran Prime in a perfect sphere. Energy began to flow between their ships, forming a lattice of light. Zor watched in horrified fascination as the energy field contracted. When it touched the outermost council ships, they simply disappeared, not destroyed. There was no debris, no explosion. They ceased to exist in this reality. The field continued to contract, consuming ship after ship. Zor's weapons officers reported that nothing affected the energy lattice. Not missiles, not energy weapons, not even kamikaze attacks by council ships. In his final moments, as the field approached his flagship, Zor received one last transmission from Holt. You once laughed at our myths. Now you will remember. The energy field touched his ship, and Admiral Krell, Zor knew no more. The Galactic Council. Chamber was nearly empty now. Of the 12 founding civilizations, representatives from only 5 remained. The others had withdrawn, seeking separate peace with the humans. High Chancellor Vox looked age beyond recognition as she formally dissolved the 300-year-old council. We can no longer claim to speak for the galaxy, she said, her voice hollow. Each civilization must determine its own path forward. As the final session ended, Saria found herself approached by a council security officer. Scholar Velm, Admiral Holt has requested your presence aboard the Erebus. The massive human flagship hung in orbit where the Council's defense headquarters had once been. As Saria's shuttle approached, she marveled at its impossible design. Angles that seemed to bend reality, surfaces that sometimes appeared transparent and sometimes utterly solid. Holt met her in a viewing chamber that offered a panoramic view of the planet below. Earth ships now controlled all the orbital installations, but they had made no move toward planetary occupation. The Council has fallen, Saria said without preamble. We know. Holt's expression remained neutral. It was inevitable once the truth emerged. What happens now? Saria asked. Will you establish a human empire? Take control of Council space. Holt looked surprised. Is that what you expect? It's what history would suggest. Power abhors a vacuum. We're not interested in ruling, Holt said, turning to look at the planet below. We've spent 3 centuries rebuilding, remembering, evolving. We don't need territory or resources. Then why this? Saria gestured at the fleet visible through the viewport. Why return with such force if not to conquer? Because, Holt said softly, the galaxy needed to remember. Not just what happened to us, but what happens when civilizations build their foundation on lies. When they mock the suffering of others as myth. Saria studied the human admiral. You could have demanded reparations. Shared power. Territory. We didn't come to take, Holt replied. We came to remind. To remind them of the price of contempt. A silence fell between them as they watched small craft moving between ships. What will you do now? Saria finally asked. We'll establish diplomatic relations with those willing to accept the truth. We'll share some of our technology, the beneficial aspects, not the weapons. And then most of us will return to our colonies beyond the chasm. Most? Holt nodded. Some will remain as observers and ambassadors, to ensure the lesson isn't forgotten again. As Saria prepared to leave, she turned back with one final question. Why me? Why request me specifically as the intermediary? Holt's expression softened slightly. Because you already knew what your people refused to accept. That myths often contain more truth than histories. She paused. We were once legends. Now we are reality. And reality is always crueler than fairy tales. 3 months later, as the human fleet prepared to return beyond the chasm of silence, Saria stood on the observation deck of the new galactic Concordat headquarters. The Concordat had replaced the Council, a looser alliance based on mutual respect rather than dominance. On the wall behind her hung a new historical marker. It showed the Eagle of Earth, and beneath it, an inscription in all major galactic languages. Remember that which was forgotten. Honor that which was mocked. For the myths of yesterday may be the masters of tomorrow. The galaxy had laughed at human myths until Earth's Warfleet appeared. It would not make the same mistake again.